But Chip starts with a run game, and there's a lot of different formation looks, a lot of different motions. I mean, Jeanty fits this really, really well.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. I would never do that to you guys. You're the diehards that get your football fill every day from either this show, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, or the Even Money Betting Podcast. I thought Warren Sharp was fantastic yesterday. In fact, I might put that on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast feed because that's way more than just betting. Him talking about the schedule inequities. So look for that. Of course, the college draft with Emory Hunt has been fantastic. We go through every pick, every team over an 8-week stretch, which is amazing. Highly encourage you to check that out. And of course, we got the Fantasy Feast with John Daigle, which we record today on Wednesdays as well. The wisdom today comes from our guy, Greg Cosell. We're continuing our post-draft series of the fits for the rookies with their new teams. But I gotta ask Greg about Brock Purdy and Fred Warner, a couple of Niners in the news since last time we spoke with Greg. Plus, there's other news to get to. Sirianni got a new deal. Joe Thuney got a new deal. NFL players are going to be able to be in the Olympics. There's a lot to get to on today's show, which is presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Okay, Greg. Loving this series. Next week, we got tight ends. Then we'll be done. Then we'll do your divisional previews for each team for 8 weeks, which I love. I always feel like after we do the divisional preview, I'm ready. Like I'm ready for the season. You help me do my prep, getting ready for the season. But before we get into the running backs and the fit for Ashton, Jeanty with the Raiders, or Omarion, Hampton with the Chargers, I do want to ask you about the two Niners that signed big deals recently. Very different players, by the way, obviously different positions. Let's start with Brock Purdy. Because interestingly, Greg, it seems like a lot of the feedback of what I thought was a very fair deal for Purdy has been negative, people not thinking that he's deserving of it. So in his 3 years so far, what have you seen from Brock Purdy? I never ask you about the money, I ask you about the player.
Right. Obviously the reason people don't think he's deserving is because of the money, though. I mean, that's the bottom line. But at the end of the day, and we've talked about this, there's not a quarterback store that you just go in and get another quarterback. That's what always gets me about when people say these things. So who's going to play quarterback if it's not Brock Purdy? But anyway, when people talk about quarterbacks, I do it, we all do it, we fall into that trap. I try not to, but people talk about physical traits, arm strength, can he run around? It's funny, I was just talking with Jack a moment ago, your guy Jack, he mentioned Lenora Sellers from South Carolina. Perfect example, 6'3", 240, big arm, can run around. Anthony Richardson, you've mentioned. But they don't talk about what are really traits as well, which is the ability to understand the game pre-snap, understand what you're looking at, throw with timing and anticipation, be able to instantly recognize disguise and late coverage rotation. These are things that Brock Purdy is very, very good at. And really, when you get down to it, if you listen to someone like Tom Brady talk when he does NFL games, that is what quarterback play is more about than the ability to throw the ball really hard, 35 or 40 yards down the field, or the ability to run a 4.4 40. It's the nuances, the details. Quarterback is a disciplined craft. Purdy is at his best. Last year, he was not quite as good as he was in their Super Bowl season, but this is the nature of his game. This is what his game is about. He is a disciplined craft quarterback. So he doesn't, yes, does he have a big arm? No, it's good enough. He doesn't have a big arm. He's more mobile than people probably think, but he's not a playmaker per se. But he's really good at the nuances and details of the position, and I guarantee that is really, really important to Kyle Shanahan.
Couple thoughts, Greg. We've talked about this before, but the reality is those traits you talked about, the pre-snap, throwing with timing and anticipation, being able to see, disguise, and late coverage rotations, the common casual fan can't see that, right? So they perceive that as it being the system,
Right.
or it being easy,
Great
or
point.
it being something that anyone can do.
Correct.
Well, all he's doing is just dropping back, and that guy's open, and he's throwing it to him.
Right.
That, like Tom Brady, system quarterback, Brock Purdy, right? Well, the reality is we've seen quarterbacks with much better traits in the same system, much better physical traits,
Right.
in the same system that aren't even close to the same player. I mean, I think about Trey Lance with the Niners and Kyle Shanahan's system. Or, even after Brady retired, they still had the same coaching staff, I think, for that first year when Cam Newton was there.
Right.
He's bigger than Brady, stronger arm, faster, all of those things. I would argue that, you need to have a certain baseline physical, Greg, but I would argue, I think that the mental traits
They're
you
more
just
important.
talked about are probably more important for that position than the physical. You can get by if you're elite mental and average physical. If you're elite physical but average mental, you're going to have some struggles.
You make a great point, and I'm so glad you worded it that way. When people see a quarterback execute at a high level, which Purdy has done for most of his 30 years, okay, that's a fact. You can't argue with that. Okay, that's what he's done. They assume that it's the system that allows a quarterback to play at a high level, particularly if it's drop back stuff. Obviously, when you watch a Lamar Jackson run around or Josh Allen do what he does, but when it's essentially a pocket quarterback executing the system at a high level, people automatically assume it's the system, Ross, just like you say. It is really hard to do. I remember years ago talking with Steve Young, and we were talking about Bill Walsh, and Steve Young said that it is so hard to do that, and the greatest compliment that I could ever get from anybody is I make it look easy. He said it is so hard to execute that system at a really high level.
You know what? It's such a good point, and it makes me think about some of the other quarterbacks that the Shanahans have had that people didn't like, and yet because they don't have physical traits, but they were really good players. I mean, Kirk Cousins,
Yep.
Matt Ryan, Matt Schaub, these are good players, but because they never physically wowed you, Greg, people never really got that excited about them. Now, Fred Warner is a different deal. Now, Fred Warner, you can visually see the things that he does, and he's one of the only players out there, Greg. I feel like it's almost unanimous. You talk to people.
He's the best linebacker in
I remember
football.
talking to some Eagles coaches. He is the prototype.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. You just mentioned the Eagles coaches. Because the size is approximately the same, you think that the Eagles saw a little bit of Fred Warner potentially in Jahad Campbell?
Ooh, that's interesting. Maybe. Maybe. Now, obviously, Fred is a very, very special player, but
And
it's
he's also
certainly possible.
The most impressive thing about Fred Warner to me, there's 10 things that are super impressive, but you may remember this. When he came out of BYU, he was not a stacked linebacker. He had to learn how to play stacked backer in the NFL. Think about that, and think about how quickly he was able to do that and become great, because that's not what he did at BYU.
You know what's crazy about that? Neither one of the first team All-Pro linebackers were stacked linebackers in college, because Bond really wasn't either.
No. Vaughn was an edge pass rusher at Wisconsin.
So that, I don't know what the lesson is there, Greg. That's actually stunning, because I just want to say this for the listeners, because I've done both, okay? I have been a D-end for junior year of high school, senior year of high school, freshman year of college. I was also an off-the-ball middle linebacker, and you can talk to guys that have done it. Totally different worlds.
Totally different
worlds.
Yes.
When you're on the line of scrimmage and on the end, your line of sight is just that end man
Yep.
through to the backfield. And they can only come block you, Greg, from one direction.
Yeah.
Right? When you're a stacked linebacker, middle linebacker, like if you haven't done it before, you feel like they're coming from everywhere. You know, you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
So I guess the lesson here is if you had stayed at stack backer, you could have been Fred Warner, huh?
I would have been first team All-Pro, no doubt. All right. So, Greg, by the way, I did love that. Junior year, ninth grade, freshman year, I made a lot of tackles. All right. Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah.
Greg. Ashton Jeanty in Chip Kelly's system and with Pete Carroll as a head coach. Obviously, he's a really good player. How do you think Chip will use him? I guess there's reports he's already changing his stance.
You know, it's really interesting that I don't know what that means, so I can't even address that. But you know, it's funny. I've been watching college players for next year's draft, and I just happened to be watching this week Carnell Tate, the wide receiver for Ohio State, and I was just noticing all the different formations and motions in the Ohio State offense where Chip Kelly was last year, and it just made me think, you know, Chip really starts with the run game. People always thought, because going back to Oregon when he was sort of cutting edge with Marcus Mariota and the pass game, but Chip starts with the run game. And there's a lot of different formation looks, a lot of different motions. I mean, Jeanty fits this really, really well. Because, Chip, this goes back to Joe Gibbs, really, back in when he was with the Chargers before under Coryell, and then when he became the Redskins head coach. It's all about minimizing run support. You know this as an O-lineman. That's the point of motions and different formations. You're trying to minimize run support from the defense. Where do you want to run the ball? And Chip's really, really good at that. So to me, this is a really, really good fit. We don't need to discuss Jeanty's traits. He's obviously got high-level traits. But I think people need to understand that with Chip's offense, it really starts with the run game.
Gibbs and the Redskins, they were way ahead of the game.
Way ahead of the game.
In terms of like Donnie Warren,
yeah.
multiple tight end sets, H-backs,
yeah.
on the move. They were, it's funny because they were very creative in the run game. And I think people don't think of run game and creative. They think run game 3 yards, cloud of dust. That's not the case.
No. And, the phrase I can't stand, and, this is just me. I love when people say, well, all this motion is window dressing. There's not one coach who will talk about motion as window dressing. It's all meant for a purpose. It's designed to do something. And don't forget, if the defense doesn't move, that tells the offense something too. So it's all designed for a purpose. You don't just have a motion. Oh, let's have a motion. There's a reason for every single motion.
Well, you know who calls it window dressing is the guys on defense.
Right.
The guys on defense, if they don't, if a team runs the same play out of 4 or 5 different formations or motions, that's the way they justify it. They say, well, it's just a window dressing. But it's the same play. It's not the same play because it's a different formation or motion that they're making you adjust to.
Correct. And like I said, if they don't adjust, that's an adjustment in and of itself.
Yeah. How about, Greg, Omarion?
Yeah.
I still don't know, to be honest with you. Omarion or Omarion Hampton?
Omarion Hampton.
Omarion?
Yeah.
Okay, Omarion Hampton with the Chargers. You talk about ingenuity in the run game. Greg Roman's the best I've seen over the last 5-10 years, but they clearly felt like they could get more out of it if they had a better back. How does Hampton fit?
I love this fit because Hampton, to me, this is not an X and O point, but when I watched Hampton, and I'm not saying he's better than Jeanty. That's not my point at all. He just looks different than Jeanty. And when I finished watching Hampton, I just came away saying this guy looks like an NFL feature back. Like just the way in which he runs. Again, I'm not making comparisons here. I just came away from Hampton, and I watched him last summer too from his 2023 tape. He just looks like an NFL back. He's big. He's physical. He's got enough speed to take it to the house if he gets in the open field. And you know that they want to start with the run game. It's Harbaugh. It's Greg Roman. They want to be physical. They want to run the ball. You mentioned Greg Roman. He's as good formationally in the run game as any offensive coordinator in the league. So this is, to me, a really, really good fit. He'll be their number one back.
Very, very excited to see him. They've revamped the interior of the offensive line a little bit too. You can't do everything you want to do in year one.
Correct.
They're getting a lot more to where they want to be here in year two. All right, then we get to round 2, And it was interesting that the Browns, I thought, Greg, a lot of hype about TreVeyon Henderson. They took his teammate, Quinshon Judkins, 2 picks ahead of Henderson to the Browns. Think about Judkins with the Browns. It seems like, Greg, he's more or less going to be taking over for Nick Chubb, who I don't think they're going to bring back.
No, well, they drafted 2 backs, and they're going to be their backs. Judkins in the second round, and he's a little more. His size is exactly the same as Hampton, although they look different on tape. He'll be the feature back, and Dylan Sampson from Tennessee will be the complimentary back. They drafted him, I believe, 5th round, and those will be their backs. And Judkins definitely has foundation back traits. He's physical, he's tough. He was 221 at the combine. He's got enough lateral juice that he can not just be a grinder. So you know the way Stefanski, the school of offense he comes from, play action, quarterback under center. We don't know who the starting quarterback will be, but Joe Flacco certainly fits that extremely well, where he's a play action under center quarterback. That's been his career. We don't know if that's what it'll be or not, but certainly, I'm sure that's one reason they brought Flacco back. But anyway, Judkins will be their feature back. I think that's a fit that works because Stefanski comes from that sort of Kubiak school. I mean, think back to when I believe it was Gary Kubiak in Houston, and you mentioned him, Matt Schaub. Think about that offense. Matt Schaub, again, not a quarterback that had quote-unquote high-level trades. I think he might have led the NFL in passing yards one year, if memory serves me correctly.
Just as an aside, Greg, it's interesting because I think Dylan Gabriel's physical traits and mind will fit this offense well.
Yep.
But it's very different from what he did at UCF, Oklahoma, and Oregon. Very different. That was all gun, ball out quick.
Yeah. I mean, but it's funny you mentioned that, and we don't know how it's all going to play out, but they obviously drafted Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round, which is not a throwaway pick. So that means in their mind, they saw Gabriel as being able to effectively execute and distribute the ball in Kevin Stefanski's offense.
Let's talk about TreVeyon Henderson, the 2nd round pick for the Patriots. A lot of people were talking like he might be able to go in round 1. Didn't happen for him. High in round 2 to New England.
Love TreVeyon Henderson. He's probably not a true foundation back in that you're going to give him the ball 280, 290 times. But he's explosive. He's a terrific receiver. And I got to tell you, what really stood out on film, I happened to notice it again yesterday. As I said, I was watching Carnell Tate. He is a hellacious pass protector. Hellacious. He just lays people out. And they still have Ramondre Stevenson, so it's going to be a running back by committee. Stevenson is a little more of a foundation back in terms of his size and style. But Henderson is a really, really good football player. And the thing I've heard from scouts I know that do the Midwest say that he is just an A-plus kid. So, that to me, I loved Henderson's tape. When I found out he's an A-plus kid, I said, okay, this kid's going to be a really good pro.
Almost nothing will ingratiate yourself with your teammates faster as a rookie than if you prove yourself in pass pro and you get after it, because they'll be like, okay, this kid understands it's important and he's good at it and he knows what's going on.
And you can tell when he does it, because I've seen the plays, that he takes pride in it. Like it's not just, oh, gee, I have to do this. He freaking takes pride in it. He was laying people out.
I love it. What about, this is the interesting one for me, because, I think he probably went earlier than a lot of people were expecting, but the Denver Broncos in the 2nd round took R.J. Harvey. Talk to me about R.J. Harvey out of UCF in Sean Payton's offense.
I really liked R.J. Harvey. I did him later in the process, just because he was not high on lists. I work off lists from a lot of people I know who do this, 12 months a year. And I was really pleasantly surprised. This kid is dynamic. He's got tremendous patience. He's got great vision. He's laterally explosive. He's got the juice to take it to the house. He's a really intriguing player. A lot of people thought in the 1st round, and I think it was pick 20, that the Broncos would take Omarion and Hampton, but they took Jay Barron, which my guess is they probably had Barron as a top 10 or top 12 pick, and they had to take him, So Harvey, in a sense, became the guy for them. And I think in the context of that offense, he can be a feature back. Because I think when you look at what Sean Payton does, that back is not necessarily a 320 carry, a season guy. So I think Harvey can be a feature back, because don't forget they've got other backs who can do other things. But I think he can be their number one runner in the context of that offense. They have the play action boot game with Bo Nix. There's a lot of elements to that offense. But Harvey was a fun watch for me because I really didn't know much about him at all, Ross.
Last one, Kaleb Johnson out of Iowa with the Steelers, 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, I thought he was a little bit of a paint-by-number zone runner. And by that I mean I think that if it's blocked well, and it was almost all zone at Iowa. That was what they ran. That if it's blocked well, he sees it, he hits it. He's a big guy. He's not purely explosive. I don't think he ran to his size. I didn't like him. All I can say is I didn't like him as much as some teams did, clearly as much as the Steelers did. I would never use the term reach because I'm not going to sit here and say I knew more than all the Steelers scouts and personnel people. I would never talk like that. I have too much respect for people in the business. All I can say is I didn't like him as much as where he was drafted, but that's okay. I could certainly be wrong. And then it depends on other factors. If the O-line is really good and you create those holes for him at the first level, he has a great feel for that. He's a very, very good zone runner when the zone is sort of presented to him.
Tight ends are next week, Greg. Thank you.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate it.
If you follow my social media at Ross Tucker NFL, you saw that I had a plethora of delicious beers over the weekend up in Maine. That was cool. First time up there, by the way. You know what else is cool? You can get free merch for drinking beer. But it's got to be Labatt, and you got to do the buy beer, get gear at rewards.labattusa.com. The fridge is insane. The backpack cooler, amazing. Buy beer, get gear. Go to rewards.labattusa.com to sign up.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, we'll start with something that you and Greg talked about earlier. The 49ers, they keep spending. As linebacker Fred Warner, he gets a 3-year, $63 million extension, which includes $56 million guaranteed, and makes him the highest paid off-ball linebacker in the NFL yet again.
So we talked with Fred at the Super Bowl. I love that guy. You can go back and watch that interview, youtube.com/RossTuckerNFL, or listen, whatever. And I give the Niners a lot of credit. They're sick of the contract drama. The reality is you end up signing these guys anyway. You might as well get it done earlier and not have to deal with all of the drama to save maybe a couple bucks, which you probably don't do anyway.
Another big-time deal in Chicago, Joe Thuney, he gets a 2-year extension for $17.5 million a year, $51 million total over the next 3 years, with $33.5 of that fully guaranteed at signing.
Man, Joe has made a lot of money. Good for him. I mean, what a career he's having. 4 Super Bowls already. Being able to play tackle. I was a little surprised he hasn't been to more Pro Bowls or All Pros, but to me, he's like he's on track for a Hall of Fame caliber career when you consider the consistency, the positional versatility, the success. I mean, he's already, I think, if he plays this contract out, going to have made more money than any guard ever. I would just say he turns 33 this year. So there is a possibility that years 2 and 3 of this contract, 34 and 35, that the Bears aren't exactly getting the return on their investment that they're looking for.
NFL owners, they vote to allow players to participate in the flag football at the 2028 Olympic Games.
Well, so this is huge for the NFL to try to grow internationally. Anytime you do something in the Olympics, it makes a big, big difference. It's flag football. It's not tackle football, but still, the more people playing flag football around the globe, the more exposure, the more people will consume the NFL product. Obviously, what I think is most interesting here is to see which guys are on the team. And A.J. Brown already came out and said he doesn't want to do it because he thinks it'll overlap a little bit with training camp. doesn't want to get injured. So there's a lot that will need to be figured out, but we got 3 years to do it. Ultimately, it's very good for me, very good for us, for football, that the flag football will be in the Olympics and that NFL players can participate. I want to grow the game as much as anybody.
Eagles, a few personnel moves. They're bringing back former Jets general manager Joe Douglas and Nick Sirianni. He's getting a multi-year contract extension.
Obviously well-deserved, still comical to me, the amount of people that thought he was going to get fired, wanted him to get fired after the Eagles started 2-2 last year. Didn't lose another game, by the way, in which Hurts was healthy for the whole game. And yeah, the Eagles lost Anthony Patch. They lost Brandon Hunt. They've lost some of their talented front office executives. So it's kind of nice for them to be able to bring back a guy like Joe Douglas. Other than that, incredible interview for you tomorrow. You are going to love. Plus, we'll see the tush push and seeding news on tomorrow's show. I think we're done here. Had an absolutely amazing time up in Maine this past weekend. You know when else you have an amazing time? Anytime you're drinking Smirnoff, especially with the way they do game days. I'm telling you, football is a we thing, right? You want to be good drinks, good fans, good friends, together. That's what Smirnoff's all about. It's the perfect vodka for crafting delicious cocktails, easy to make, versatile for any and all fans over 21. Grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer and head to Smirnoff.com to find recipes of delicious cocktails perfect for game day. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York to New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. We are less than a month from Father's Day, the forgotten holiday, or today's a big anniversary day this time of year. In fact, today is my 20th wedding anniversary. It's pretty cool. Pretty hard to believe it's 20 years already. At any rate, anniversaries, birthdays, whatever, have you at least checked out myfrontpagestory.com? Have you at least gone there, thrown your email address in, gotten the 20% discount code, and seen what it looks like? Because it's pretty darn cool. Backofficescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.